This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Servile State by Hilaire Belloc. If we do not restore the institution of property, we cannot escape restoring the institution of slavery. There is no third course. Section 1. Synopsis of the Servile State. Introduction. The subject of this book. It is written to maintain the thesis that industrial society as we know it will tend towards the re-establishment of slavery. The sections into which the book will be divided. Section 1. Definitions. What wealth is and why necessary to man. How produced. The meaning of the words capital, proletariat, property, means of production. The definition of the capitalist state. The definition of the servile state. What it is and what it is not. The re-establishment of status in the place of contract. That servitude is not a question of degree, but of kind. Summary of these definitions. Section 2. Our civilization was originally servile. The servile institution in pagan antiquity. Its fundamental character. A pagan society took it for granted. The institution disturbed by the advent of the Christian Church. Section 3. How the servile institution was for a time dissolved. The subconscious effect of the faith in this matter. The main elements of pagan economic society. The villa. The transformation of the agricultural slave into the Christian serf. Next, into the Christian peasant. The corresponding erection throughout Christendom of the distributive state. It is nearly complete at the close of the Middle Ages. It was not machinery that lost us our freedom. It was the loss of a free mind. Section 4. How the distributive state failed. This failure, original in England. This story of decline from distributive property to capitalism. The economic revolution of the 16th century. The confiscation of monastic land. What might have happened had the state retained it. As a fact, that land is captured by an oligarchy. England is capitalist before the advent of the Industrial Revolution. Therefore, modern industry, proceeding from England, has grown in a capitalist mould. Section 5. The capitalist state, in proportion as it grows perfect, grows unstable. It can of its nature be but a transitory phase lying between an earlier and a later stable state of society. The two internal strains which render it unstable. A. The conflict between its social realities and its moral and legal basis. B. The insecurity and insufficiency to which it condemns free citizens. The few possessors can grant or withhold livelihood from the many non-possessors. Capitalism is so unstable that it dares not proceed to its own logical conclusion, but tends to restrict competition among owners and insecurity and insufficiency among non-owners. Section 6. The stable solutions of this instability. The three stable social arrangements which alone can take the place of unstable capitalism. The distributive solution. The collectivist solution. The servile solution. The reformer will not openly advocate the servile solution. There remains only the distributive and the collectivist solution. Section 7. Socialism is the easiest apparent solution of the capitalist crux. A contrast between the reformer making for distribution and the reformer making for socialism or collectivism. The difficulties met by the first type. He is working against the grain. The second is working with the grain. Collectivism, a natural development of capitalism. It appeals to both capitalists and proletarian. None the less we shall see that the collectivist attempt is doomed to fail and to produce a thing very different from its object, to wit, the Servile State. Section 8. The reformers and the reformed are both making for the Servile State. There are two types of reformers working along the line of least resistance. These are the Socialist and the Practical Man. The Socialist, again, is of two kinds, the Humanist and the Statistician. The Humanist would like both to confiscate from the owners and to establish security and sufficiency for the non-owners. He is allowed to do the second thing by establishing servile conditions. He is forbidden to do the first. The statistician is quite content so long as he can run and organize the poor. Both are canalized towards the Servile State, and both are shepherded off their ideal collectivist state. Meanwhile, the great mass, the proletariat, upon whom the reformers are at work, though retaining the instinct of ownership, has lost any experience of it, and is subject to a private law much more than to the law of the courts. This is exactly what happened in the past during the converse change from slavery to freedom. Private law became stronger than public at the beginning of the Dark Ages. The owners welcomed the changes which maintained them in ownership and yet increased the security of their revenue. Today the non-owners will welcome whatever keeps them a wage-earning class, but increases their wages and their security without insisting on the expropriation of the owners. An appendix showing that the collectivist proposal to buy out the capitalist in lieu of expropriating him is in vain. Section 9. The Servile State has begun. The manifestation of the Servile State in law or proposals of law will fall into two sorts. A. Laws or proposals of law compelling the proletariat to work. B. Financial operations riveting the grip of capitalists more strongly upon society. As to A, we find it already at work in measures such as the Insurance Act and proposals such as compulsory arbitration, the enforcement of trades union bargains, and the erection of labour colonies, etc., for the unemployable. As to the second, we find that so-called municipal or socialist experiments in acquiring the means of production have already increased and are continually increasing the dependence of society upon the capitalist. Introduction. The subject of this book. This book is written to maintain and prove the following truth: that our free modern society, in which the means of production are owned by a few, being necessarily in unstable equilibrium, it is tending to reach a condition of stable equilibrium by the establishment of compulsory labour legally enforceable upon those who do not own the means of production for the advantage of those who do. With this principle of compulsion applied against the non-owners, there must also come a difference in their status, and in the eyes of society and of its positive law, men will be divided into two sets. The first, economically free and politically free, possessed of the means of production, and securely confirmed in that possession. The second, economically unfree and politically unfree, but at first secured by their very lack of freedom in certain necessaries of life and in a minimum of well-being beneath which they shall not fall. Society, having reached such a condition, would be released from its present internal strains, and would have taken on a form which would be stable, that is, capable of being indefinitely prolonged without change. In it would be resolved the various factors of instability which increasingly disturb that form of society called capitalist, and men would be satisfied to accept and to continue in such a settlement. To such a stable society I shall give, for reasons which will be described in the next section, the title of the Servile State. I shall not undertake to judge whether this approaching organisation of our modern society be good or evil. I shall concern myself only with showing the necessary tendency towards it, which has long existed, and the recent social provisions which show that it has actually begun. This new state will be acceptable to those who desire, consciously or by implication, the re-establishment among us of a difference of status between possessors and non-possessor. It will be distasteful to those who regard such a distinction with ill favour or with dread. My business will not be to enter into the discussion between these two types of modern thinkers, but to point out to each and to both that which the one favours and the other would fly is upon them. I shall prove my thesis in particular from the case of the industrial society of Great Britain, including that small, alien and exceptional corner of Ireland which suffers or enjoys industrial conditions today. I shall divide the matter thus. 1. I shall lay down certain definitions. 2. Next I shall describe the institution of slavery and the servile state, which is the basis, as these were in the ancient world. I shall then, 3. sketch very briefly the process whereby that age-long institution of slavery was slowly dissolved during the Christian centuries, and whereby the resulting mediaeval system, based upon highly divided property in the means of production, was 4. wrecked in certain areas of Europe as it approached completion, and had substituted for it in practice, though not in legal theory, a society based upon capitalism. 5. Next I shall show how capitalism was of its nature unstable, because its social realities were in conflict with all existing or possible systems of law, and because its effects in denying sufficiency and security were intolerable to men. How, being thus unstable, it consequently presented a problem which demanded a solution, to wit, the establishment of some stable form of society whose law and social practice should correspond, and whose economic results, by providing sufficiency and security, should be tolerable to human nature. 6. I shall next present the only three possible solutions. A. Collectivism, or the placing of the means of production in the hands of the political officers of the community. B. Property, or the re-establishment of a distributive state in which the mass of citizens should severally own the means of production. C. Slavery, or a servile state, in which those who do not own the means of production shall be legally compelled to work for those who do, and shall receive in exchange a security of livelihood. Now, seeing the distaste which the remains of our long Christian tradition has bred in us for directly advocating the third solution, and boldly supporting the re-establishment of slavery, the first two alone are open to reformers. 1. A reaction towards a condition of well-divided property, or the distributive state. 2. An attempt to achieve the ideal collectivist state. It can easily be shown that this second solution appeals most naturally and easily to a society already capitalist, on account of the difficulty which such a society has to discover the energy, the will, and the vision requisite for the first solution. 7. I shall next proceed to show how the pursuit of this ideal collectivist state, which is bred of capitalism, leads men acting upon a capitalist society not towards the collectivist state, nor anything like it, but to that third utterly different thing, the servile state. To this 8th section I shall add an appendix showing how the attempt to achieve collectivism gradually by public purchase is based upon an illusion. 8. Recognizing that theoretical argument of this kind, though intellectually convincing, is not sufficient to the establishment of my thesis, I shall conclude by giving examples from modern English legislation, which examples prove that the servile state is actually upon us. Such is the scheme I designed for this book.